What if I told you that Persia never actually ended, but rather it only changed its name? Why would a country whose history spans thousands of years decide to erase its identity in front of the world in the mid-20th century? Today, we will embark on a journey of great empires, brutal invasions, and the decisions that rewrote the memory of an entire nation. This is not just the story of a country. This is the story of how power, religion, and public perception can change the destiny of an entire civilization. So sit back and relax, because what you are about to learn is far more than just a name change. But before we start, be sure to subscribe to this channel and let us know in the comments which other forgotten civilizations you would like to learn about. Let's dive deep into this mystery. Seekers of history's mysteries, imagine a land surrounded by towering mountains, scorching deserts, and ancient trade routes, through which not only trade goods but also identity, power, and traditions traveled. That land is the Iranian Plateau, a crucial region that has been the cradle of civilizations for thousands of years. But how did all of this begin, and who were the people who laid the foundation of this region that we know today as Iran? To understand this, we have to go back to the period 2000 years before Jesus Christ, the second millennium BC, when Indo-Iranian tribes came and settled here. They were nomads who spoke Indo-European languages. These were the distant relatives of the people who, centuries later, would speak languages like Latin, Greek, or even Portuguese and Spanish. Their language had no connection to Arabic, which many people today mistakenly associate with Iran. In ancient Persian, Madar meant mother and Padar meant father, the echoes of which can still be heard today in the Latin words mater and pater. These were not mere words. These were the roots of a unique, deep, and ancient culture. Among these tribes, two were the most prominent, the Medes and the Persians. The Medes settled in the northwest of the region that is today's Iran. They were powerful and organized, and they soon established themselves as a dominant power. On the other hand, the Persian tribes settled further south in an area called Pars, from which the name Persia originated. This area was fertile and important, but initially not very powerful. At that time, no one could have even imagined that these people would change the course of history forever. In that era, Persia was merely a limited geographical name. It did not represent the entire region or the entire civilization. The real power lay with the Medes. They established the first great empire in this part of the world, long before the name Persia echoed in foreign courts or was written in history books. But things were about to change. Amidst these mountains and plains, a man was about to be born whose ambitions would shatter the structures of the past. A leader who dreamed of an unparalleled unity, rising above divided tribes. His name was Kurosh, whom the world knows as Cyrus the Great. With him began the era of that first great empire which showed the courage to conquer not only lands, but also hearts. Before Alexander, Napoleon, or Genghis Khan dreamed of conquering the world, one man had accomplished this task first, and in a completely different manner. When the empires of the ancient Middle East ruled through iron fists, destruction, and exile, Cyrus the Great founded his empire on a completely different ideology: rule through respect. After defeating the Medes, Cyrus did not merely unite the people, but he laid the foundation of the Achaemenid Empire, a political machine that fostered loyalty instead of spreading fear. Instead of imposing a single language or religion, he protected the temples of the conquered people, respected their gods, and allowed their cultures to flourish. For example, to the exiled Jews in Babylon, he was not an invader, but a savior. To the Babylonians, he was not an enemy, but the chosen protector of their god Marduk. Cyrus did not call himself the representative of any Persian god, but he cleverly assumed the role of the chosen one of the local gods, and this strategy was immensely successful. During the reigns of Cyrus and his successors, particularly Darius I, the Persian Empire expanded from the banks of the Indus River to the shores of the Aegean Sea and from Egypt to Central Asia. In less than a century, they absorbed the great empires of the ancient world and turned them into their provinces. Egypt, Babylon, names that once dominated history, were now subordinate to Persepolis. But the size of the empire was not their only achievement. This empire laid a vast network of roads that connected thousands of miles of territory, created an incredibly fast messenger system, and established a bureaucracy that managed affairs through organization, recording, and negotiation rather than mere control. It was a masterpiece of diplomacy, strategy, and pragmatism. Many historians, like Lloyd Llewellyn-Jones, unhesitatingly call it the world's first superpower. Yet, this balance of power based on cultural respect and centralization was very fragile, much like a tightrope tied right across the empire, which only needed a push or a sword to break. And that push came from the west, led by a determined young man whose name was Alexander. Now, what was about to happen was not merely a war, but a collision of two worlds. In the year 334 BC, a relatively small but organized army crossed the Hellespont and headed east. It was led by a young Macedonian king who was not even 30 years old yet. His name was Alexander, but the world was going to know him as Alexander the Great. His goal was not merely to conquer territory, but to exact revenge for Greece, humiliate Persia, and perhaps become a legend. And he did exactly that. In the decisive battles of the Granicus, Issus, and finally Gaugamela, the Persian army was crushed. The Achaemenid Empire, which had ruled half the world for generations, collapsed before the assault of a young man whose ambitions were godlike. But the most surprising thing was not his victory, but what he did after the victory. Alexander did not destroy Persia. He did not wipe it off the map. He admired Persia, studied it, and in a way, assimilated into it himself. He married Persian princesses, wore Eastern clothing, participated in Zoroastrian rituals, and began calling himself the legitimate successor of the Achaemenid kings. He retained the Persian bureaucracy and ruled from Persian palaces, and for many Greeks, this was an unforgivable act. Within his own army, this Persianization of Alexander stirred up a storm. Generals and soldiers raised on Greek ideologies began to view these actions of his as treason. Had they not come to destroy Persia and free Greece from the slavery of the East? Now their own leader seemed captivated by the spell of Persian luxuries, grandeur, and spirituality. Internal tensions rose, and some people even started plotting rebellions. But Alexander's vision was very broad. He understood that ruling such a massive empire could not be done merely by the force of the sword. It was a matter of symbols, legal legitimacy, and the blending of cultures. He wanted to create a universal civilization where the East and the West could live together. Perhaps he wanted to become something more than a Macedonian king. Perhaps he wanted to become immortal. His sudden death in the year 323 BC at the age of 32 left that dream unfulfilled. Due to the lack of a clear successor, his empire was divided among his generals, the Diadochi. The core territory of the former Persian Empire fell into the hands of Seleucus's court, meaning the Seleucid Empire. But Persia, as an idea, had not ended. It was merely sleeping, and soon new empires were going to awaken it so it could reclaim the legacy of the ancient kings. When Alexander died, his empire shattered like broken glass. But within these scattered pieces, the spirit of Persia remained alive during Seleucid rule and later during the era of the Parthians. The region of ancient Persia always remained the center of people's attention. Kings kept changing, but the cultural heartbeat of this region was going strong. It was only a matter of time before the new Persians reclaimed their throne. Thus arose the Sassanid Empire, which emerged from the very same region of Pars where everything had started. They declared themselves the direct descendants of the Achaemenids and proudly restored many of their traditions. Under their rule, the ancient Persian religion, Zoroastrianism, centered around the god Ahura Mazda, was once again granted the status of the state religion. Temples were rebuilt, culture thrived, and Persia once again became an empire that the world feared. But no power lasts forever. In the 7th century, a new power was emerging from the Arabian Peninsula. It was Islam, and it came not as a guest, but as a conqueror. Within a few decades, Arab armies defeated the Sassanids and took control of the former Persian Empire. With them came new beliefs, a new language, and a new political system. The Zoroastrian religion was gradually replaced by Islam. The Arabic language became the administrative and religious language, and Persian, accepting its influence, adopted new words, styles, and structures. But the Persian spirit did not die. It remained alive in their poetry, science, art, and even in the way they embraced the new without completely abandoning the old. In the coming centuries, this region remained under the influence of the Turks, the Mongols, and other local Persian royal dynasties. The Buyid dynasty even controlled Baghdad, which was the center of the caliphate. Then came the Seljuks, Genghis Khan's Mongols, Tamerlane, and various Turkmen states who fought fierce wars over every inch of the territory. It was a game of chess where power was constantly changing hands. But in this storm of wars and conquests, one thing began to grow stronger: a Persian identity that, although Muslim, distinguished itself from the Arab world. This identity was about to become even stronger under a new empire, which would not only restore political unity, but also leave a deep religious imprint. In this chaotic era of small states and regional wars, a power emerged that forever changed the political and religious soul of this region. That was the Safavid dynasty. They were not merely power-hungry rulers. They had a clear vision of uniting the entire region under a separate flag, and that was Shi'a Islam. Before this, Sunni Islam was predominantly followed in this region, just as in the rest of the Islamic world. But the Safavids decided to enforce the Twelver faith as the official religion. This was not an easy transition. They implemented it through strictness, reforms, and deep social changes. But by doing so, they sowed the seed that, to this day, distinguishes Iran from the rest of the Islamic world. The Safavid dynasty did not just bring about a religious transformation, but also played a crucial role in the rebirth of the Persian identity, which this time was intertwined with Islam. They promoted architecture, poetry, philosophy, medicine, and science, but under a new banner, in a new language, and with a worldview that blended royal heritage and Shia spirituality. This was a new Persia, with a different face. And with this new face, the name Iran began to emerge more strongly. The word Iran originates from Aryanum, the land of the Aryan people. The roots of this name were very ancient, but until then it was used only within the country, not outside. In contrast, Persia, which was originally the name of just one province, Pars, had become the name by which foreigners had known this country since the time of the Greeks. Therefore, when the Safavids consolidated their control and later dynasties like the Qajars kept the state structure alive, a dual identity was flourishing. Persia, for the outside world, and Iran, for the Iranians themselves. This duality was neither accidental nor permanent. Because in the 20th century, with the arrival of a new king who was determined to modernize and westernize the country, this duality was going to end not through wars or treaties, but through a letter sent to every embassy in the world. For centuries, the world knew this ancient land by the name of Persia. It was a name that evoked memories of great empires, exquisite carpets, mystical poetry, and advanced science. But for many in the West, Persia also meant something exotic, distant, and decadent. It was the legacy of Greek tales that portrayed Persia as a civilization of excessive luxury, tyranny, and moral decay. In this context, during the 20th century, the then king of Iran, Reza Shah Pahlavi, who had a firm intention of modernizing the country, made a decision that was as symbolic as it was strategic. In 1935, he sent a diplomatic circular to all foreign embassies requesting that from now on, his country be called by its native name, meaning Iran. Why was this done? This was not merely a matter of linguistic preference. It was actually an attempt to break the Orientalist view that the West held about Persia, a label that reflected a hint of colonial mindset. By adopting the name Iran, which in Persian means the land of the Aryans, or the land of the great people, the country attempted to establish a new, strong, modern, and independent identity. It was a brilliant move of symbolic diplomacy, but within the country it was not devoid of controversy. Many intellectuals and citizens within the country considered this decision to be a kind of betrayal. To them, Persia represented a glorious past. The Achaemenids, Darius, Cyrus, literature, medicine, and the grandeur of the empire that had challenged the world. Abandoning this name felt, to some people, akin to severing a thousands of years old heritage, but the decision was final. Iran was declared the official name, and by this name, it began to be written in books, newspapers, and international treaties. But history did not stop here. Following the revolution led by Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979, the monarchy was overthrown, and the Islamic Republic of Iran was established. Relations with the West were severed, Shia ideology assumed an even more central role, and the global perception of the country changed dramatically. Today, upon hearing the name Iran, the image of global geopolitical tensions, sanctions, conflicts, and extremism emerges in the minds of many people. In contrast, the irony is that the name Persia has once again assumed a romanticized status, associated with a lost grandeur, magnificent culture, and an almost legendary past. Two names, one land, and a constant struggle to decide how it will be remembered. Because sometimes, a simple name quietly conceals the battle of what we were in the past, what we are today, and how the world wants to see us. Thank you for watching the video until the end. If you like this video and you have an interest in such topics, then subscribe to the channel so you do not miss upcoming videos and can discover more amazing stories. See you in the next video.